Hello and welcome back to Zankus Watch. I'm here with another Pocket React. As you may have found out, I finally have a screen recording software and I am so excited to use it. And I'm just getting all sorts of fantastic stuff on screen that I've really wanted to react to but wasn't able to earlier. So I want to do another quick Pocket React for the channel. This one here is a reaction to a segment on RT, which is a Russian television channel. It's mostly a channel that's full of pro-Kremlin propaganda. It's a state propaganda channel. It's a RT does, I believe, technically employ Tara Reade, or she's a contributor. They call her an RT contributor here. They are having her on this program where she is saying that she's a geopolitical expert. I find this hilarious because not only does she have absolutely no qualifications as a geopolitical expert, but you can tell from this interview that she is so unprepared. She's just spewing talking points from Twitter. She's not speaking like anybody who actually understands geopolitics or even the basics of geopolitics. So let's watch, shall we?
Thanks, Gail. And we know it is late here, and we appreciate you joining us. Really, Tara. We've just heard that the leaders of Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela have already come out and congratulated Putin. What sort of reaction do you think we're going to see now that from the global South? Because there clearly is creating a chasm, a divide, isn't there?
Definitely, and you bring up a good point because the global South has made it clear that they've had enough of the Western hegemony, and
You see, she can't even really pronounce hegemony well. And she keeps on saying global south, but she doesn't mention one country, let alone one leader that has released a public statement about Putin. She's not talked about any sort of agreement or treaty or any type of deal, or even the summit that Putin held with African leaders back in July 2023. She doesn't know any of this because she's not a geopolitical analyst. She's someone who's been handed this job that she's clearly unqualified for because it's a way for the Russians to launder money towards her without being caught giving her a fee. This is all alleged, of course, but whether it's her RT columns that are very badly written or this laughable interview where she shows absolutely no expertise in even basic international politics, she is showing that these jobs are given to her as a sort of laughable tissue thin cover for the Kremlin to launder their fee towards her for her op in 2020 when she falsely accused Biden of rape.
they've made it clear in very many ways. Also, between what's going on in Gaza, between you.
She left right to Gaza. She didn't even talk about like the global south and Putin. Like name a country. Name a damn country. Talk about Russia's rising influence in Palau. Talk about the grain deal that Putin has been trying to broker between Egypt and Mali. Talk about the Wagner Group, who has had a great deal of arms and extensive operations going on in Mali. Talk about actual countries, talk about actual leaders. She can't. She just goes right to the TikTok talking points, whether it be global south, Western hegemony, Gaza, all the buzzwords, none of the substance.
Okay, they're done, and they're done with being bullied, frankly, by the U.S. and the coups that have happened in South America in different countries. So they've
I mean, well, first of all, talk about the coups, the multiple coups that have been happening in African countries, but she's not going to talk about that. And she's also sort of projecting a type of whiny victimhood. I'm this sort of poor picked upon girl. She's projecting that victimhood mentality onto geopolitics, which is so bizarre. All she does is sort of project, bring everything back to victimhood, bring everything back to, oh, everybody's bullying me. And she's, projected it on every single situation where she thinks she can get sympathy pats. And now she's projecting the sort of I'm constantly bullied victimhood scenario onto countries. Not just people, but actual countries. And it's so bizarre because that's the way her mind works. She's almost 60, and that has been constantly the way her mind works.
definitely sending a message that they're interested in some of the alliances that are forming, like BRICS, and countries have joined.
You can see her sort of gasping and stuttering a little bit because she knows she's out of her depth. She doesn't really know what's going on. I don't think she even knows the countries that make up BRICS. Tell us what BRICS is. BRICS. What's BRICS? BRICS means Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It's a new economic coalition that Putin and Xi are trying to put together to rival sort of the Western economic uh, alliances that have been sort of keeping the world running after World War II. That's what BRICS is. And the whole idea of the multipolar world is supposed to challenge the unipolar world, the one pole being the United States. That has also been essentially keeping the international community stable since after World War II. This is something she hasn't talked about because she doesn't really know it. She's not a geopolitical expert, and you can see her sort of gasp a little bit and stutter. You can even see from her facial expression that she is so out of her depth, and she just wants to get through this interview.
And so, yeah, you definitely see a movement towards the East. It feels like
The East. You definitely see a movement towards she doesn't know any country's name. She just says the East. It's rather kind of hilarious.
Vladimir Putin has been a key figure when it comes to this new emerging multipolar world. Right. How do you see things playing out in the coming years now that Vladimir Putin looks likely to be in office for another 6 years? How do you think things are going to?
By the way, just look at how far away they're seated from her. I think that's kind of funny. And look how uncomfortable she is. You see, here's the thing about this is why we Americans don't like to travel abroad. We're really far larger than most other people in either Russia or Europe. Now, I'm not 300 pounds. I'm just I'm a healthcare worker. I've never examined Tara Reade. I'm gonna just look at her right now and say, yeah, I give her like 300, 310. She's definitely in the 300s here. She can't sit in that chair. She has to slide herself forward because she simply cannot sit in the chair that that slimmer woman and that, relatively normal sized man are able to sit in pretty comfortably. I mean, she just looks obese, uncomfortable. Her shirt is ill-fitting, and she does not like this. She just wants to leave, and she's just there to sort of have something on the record that shows that she is a geopolitical analyst and an RT contributor. So if anybody asks her why Kremlin is paying her so much money, why is RT paying her so much money, she can point there and say, well, I did some work for them. That's why. It's a salary, completely above board.
Well, it's going to change. I think it's going to change in the direction of what you just said with multipolar powers.
Look how nervous she is. She's really just speaking off the top of her head. She doesn't know exactly how to discuss this sort of thing. She's repeating buzzwords, but look at her like the little gasps between sentences. That's a big tell that she is very nervous and that she's lying, or at least she's trying to sound a lot more intelligent than she actually is.
The U.S., if they want to remain a superpower, they have to get on that board with multi-power instead of the unipower. Because
She can't really give details. She's just giving buzzwords. If the US wants to remain, they have to get on board, or like, I mean, can you give a specific example? Can you even name a country besides the US? I don't think she's even named Russia yet. Can you name the countries that make up BRICS? Can you name a specific example of a country that is starting to make stronger alliances with Russia? There are quite a few actually, and it's something that like Western governments, like the UK and the US, have to pay more attention to. Putin hasn't been great so far. The Ukraine war has sort of really tamped down on many countries who were before 2022 perhaps more eager to make alliances with Russia. That being said, there are examples. There are examples across the globe, which if she were actually a geopolitical expert, she would be giving those examples, but she's giving nothing. She's giving TikTok and zero and nothing. Just giving Twitter. Hell, Twitter actually gives more information than what she's saying, and that's sad because Twitter gives no information.
U.S. and the Great Britain really want to hold on to that, and they've been doing everything desperately they can, including starting, what they're trying to do in the Middle East and provoking Iran.
And then she can't really name a specific interest, starting what they're trying to do in the Middle East. That's a bit vague. Can you give anything specific? Or provoking Iran? Or, exactly how? Exactly how? Just talk. Name a leader. Name a UK leader. Name at least one thing, one specific date where the US and the UK have started some type of procedure or military event that has been provoking Iran. Reference something specific, please. You're an expert. This is what experts do. You're supposed to know this information.
And other things and what they're doing with Gaza. So these endless wars.
And what exactly are they doing with Gaza? Come on. You don't even really know that, do you?
People are weary of them. They're done with them. People want economic stability. They want, something for the future for their children and their grandchildren. So yeah, they're looking east.
Just vagueness. Okay, they want economic stability. Okay, how? So let's talk about first of all the grain deal. I know that Putin tried to meet with several leaders from Egypt and other African nations to try to broker a grain deal because there was real concern about an international famine after Russia started blocking grain exports from Ukraine. Can you at least reference that? She can't. And it's not because it makes Putin look kind of dumb. It also is because she doesn't really know internationally what anyone's going on. She could at least lie and say Putin managed to bring grain to Africa and stop a famine. I mean, that would be pure propaganda and not true, but at least it's referencing a specific international event. But you can't do that because she is so unable to reference anything specific. She is such a phony expert. She's not an expert at all. And she's just having to cosplay as an expert so that she can pretend that Russia paid her all this money just because they wanted her valuable input on their RT program.
And President Putin has been presenting a more innovative, future-oriented view that's more interested in diplomacy and economic ties. So we'll see. But I think that's
Uh, we'll see. Anything specific? Nothing specific. You're getting no specifics here.
the future. Yeah, it's a message of working together rather than having one leading power. Let's do a little compare and comparison. We were talking earlier about the US election and how approval ratings are rarely this high for Western leaders. So, why do you think that is? Why do you think President Putin has such a high approval rating compared to presidents like Biden or Rishi Sunak or even Macron?
See, look at that. Look, that announcer actually knows her job. She's mentioned several specific world leaders: Putin, Biden, Rishi Sunak, Macron, who is the president of France, and she's asking a very specific question, which talks about approval ratings. Now, obviously, she's also Kremlin propaganda, so she's not truthful, but she at least knows her job. She knows you have to mention specific leaders when talking about international politics. You have to mention specific aspects of what's going on, like approval ratings and elections. And that's something that Tara Reade just doesn't know how to do. Now, let's watch what she does. I want to see her bumble through this.
Well, from what I can observe, President Putin has done a
What I can observe from my expert opinion.
good job about raising the Russian people from poverty in the 90s and the disarray that was happening during that time with the fall of the Soviet Union to bringing forward a working class and a middle class that is doing well. So you have
So right now would be a good time for you to throw out some statistics. At By how many percentage points has the Russian economy grown under Putin? How many more people are employed under Putin? How much better have exports been under Putin? An actual geopolitical analyst would start showing numbers. And she doesn't do that. She's just sort of throwing out vast generalizations that honestly, even TikTok would say is, nah, we need more specifics. Start talking about numbers. This is what experts do.
young people that are able to afford education, medical care, apartments, flats, houses. And when you have that vibrant working force,
Apartments, flats. Okay, numbers, please. How much has home ownership grown in Russia under Putin? How many more people are able to be in apartments? How many more graduate degrees have Russian students been able to obtain under Putin? Again, this is where numbers come in. If you are a geopolitical expert, you have to throw out numbers.
like you're seeing in Russia and innovation and all the building that they're doing with their own infrastructure. You know, um,
And you know what? The question was about approval ratings by Putin versus other leaders, and she doesn't even know Putin's approval ratings at this point. I don't think she even knows that figure. What is the approval rating for Putin right now in Russia? Obviously, it's biased because, Russia owns all the state media, and people are frankly opposition parties are not allowed to thrive under Putin's Russia. But that being said, you should at least know the numbers of like Putin's approval ratings versus Biden's approval ratings. She doesn't even know that.
It really is positive force. So he has been very focused on the Russian people. Unfortunately in America, and I can't speak for Great Britain, but in America, our politicians are interested in lining their pockets, unfortunately, and money and power. But in Russia, what I've
And money and power and lining their pockets. And you see, this is just vagaries.
noticed is that President Putin is interested in what the people want, and they know that, and that's why you have such a
Look at, you can sort of tell from these people's expressions they're nodding, but especially with the guy, he's like, "Dear God, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's just sort of bullshitting her way through this like a kid who didn't study for a school book report." That's exactly what the vibe is in this interview. She's like the kid who did not put together a school presentation, is now babbling in front of the class, hoping to get a C minus at best, and just rolling the dice without any preparation. And you can really see it on these people's faces.
Yeah. Tara, let me talk a little bit more about foreign policy. You talk a little about unity, how Putin looks at the people and how to protect the people. You talk about how perhaps the West are trying to line their pockets. I remember a time, and I'm sure Nikki does too, when the world wanted to be one world, one sort of planet. We talked about green energy. When did it become a divided world? I want to say it's got something to do with Biden, which is quite an aggressive leader, isn't he? He's a war leader. If do you think if
They really are hand feeding her these talking points, aren't they? He's now realizing that he has to pitch softballs at her because any question that requires her to start at least mentioning some figures, mentioning some statistics, mentioning some actual names associated with world politics right now, she's going to absolutely fail. So he's just trying to softball this as much as possible, and of course, make sure that the propaganda is clear and unalloyed. These are Kremlin propagandists. They're far more intelligent than Tara Reade is, but they're all of them on the stage Kremlin propagandists.
the leadership changes in the US, could we see perhaps a more unity? Even discussions, perhaps even just coming to the negotiating table, like Nikki was saying earlier.
Yeah, you're bringing up a good point because I think that Donald Trump, when he was president, we weren't close to a brink of world war, right? There wasn't that kind of tension going on. He's more interested in economic competition. He's not interested in war. So we need more politicians.
Well, Trump, first of all, was more interested in just giving Putin whatever he wanted. I mean, that's what Trump was interested in. I mean, the whole point of like he wasn't interested in war. No, he just quietly let Putin have everything, including our intelligence, allegedly. But I don't know. Fuck it, Trump. You can go ahead and try and sue me. Yeah, you gave intelligence to Putin. I think we all know that. And once again, check it out. She's gasping. She's not just nervous. She may also have some cardiac issues. I suspect she does, which may mean that her respiratory rate is, not great. And she's probably more frequently breathless than should be healthy for her.
Like President Putin that are interested in, economic competition, if you will, and because that
Also, her shirt's driving me nuts. They should have arranged that shirt. All those shiny wrinkles. Her shirt, I want that shirt needs to be straightened and arranged. She actually should have given her a better shirt. That thing just doesn't fit her.
fuels innovation, gives jobs, and it gives energy. People don't want destruction. You're right. Biden is very divisive, and divisive is the perfect word for him. He is all about dividing and conquering. And, Nikki was bringing up the multi.
Have you noticed that Biden has become a lot more virile in the eyes of his enemies since they're leaning away from Biden as a dementia-riddled senile old man and more towards Biden as a genocidal maniac, divide and conquer the war president? God damn, the man has suddenly gotten a lot of testosterone in him in the eyes of his critics. It's actually kind of funny. Does he have dementia or is he a maniacal world leader? I mean, I don't think he can be both. It's kind of funny how this narrative has shifted from he doesn't even know where he is, he's wearing diapers, to like she's committing genocide, he's drinking the blood of Palestinians, he divides and conquers. It's Choose a narrative, folks.
Polar world, really, we're in it. The multipolar world is happening, and the dollar is getting dumped. Once the petrodollar is completely dumped, the U.S. is going to have to make some hard decisions.
All right, I need some statistics again. By how much has the dollar dropped compared to other currencies? How much has the dollar dropped compared to the ruble? You could actually, you say again, this is the time to throw out numbers and stats. You're Miss Geopolitical Expert, right? You can't just repeat something you heard on TikTok. You actually have to put out some numbers. Even if they're fake numbers, this is RT, they're probably going to be fake. You have to put out some numbers.
And they're going to have to join in with the multipolar world, or they're going to be left behind.
Yeah, indeed. We're going to have to leave it there. Always a pleasure talking to you, Tara. Thanks again for staying up with us.
Sure.
Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tara. Thank you.
And we're now going
Alrighty, thank you for sticking through with me for that. I know she got up as quickly as possible because she was scared of that chair collapsing under her. Now that was one piece that I wanted to react to. There's also something else that she recorded about last year. Actually, it might have been year before last, which was before she defected to Russia, where she told this outrageous lie about her health. That was so, if anyone ever heard it and that person worked in the healthcare field, they knew how outrageous that lie was. And I would like to react to that too before I lock this up. Oh, excuse me. Let me just expand this a bit. All right. Or you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fit this in here. There's our girl. Okay, I want to react to this. This is from her podcast, The Politics of Something or Other. I don't really care. It was with Fiorello. I don't know, another pro-Russian woman who has a sort of Italian-sounding name. I don't really care. But before she starts this podcast, she tells this absolute whopper of a lie. And I know it's a lie because anyone who knows anything about healthcare knows that she is lying. And I want you all to hear it.
Welcome back to Politics of Survival. This show, I'm going to be having Fiorella Isabel join us, and we're going to talk about lots of things that are going on in the geopolitical world. First, I wanted to talk about something briefly. You haven't seen me for a few days. I've been a little bit offline. I was in the hospital late last week, and I was in ICU, and I'm okay.
I was in the hospital late last week in ICU, but I'm okay. If you're in the ICU, you are not okay. You are either on the vent or you are so critically ill that the only way you got out of ICU was after days and days of the doctor making sure that he could at least transfer you down to the regular floor and then make sure that you had enough support system at home that he could safely discharge you with follow-up to rehab. That's what ICU means. The fact that she just casually says, yeah, 4 or 5 days ago I was in the ICU, but I'm okay now. And she clearly looks okay. She does not have oxygen on. She doesn't have like a trach or anything like that. She's just sitting there saying like, listen, I was in ICU, but I'm okay now. Let's hear this again. I love this. 1 second. Let's just hear this.
Isabel join us, and we're going to talk about lots of things that are going on in the geopolitical world. First, I wanted to talk about something briefly. You haven't seen me for a few days. I've been a little bit offline. I was in the hospital late last week, and I was in ICU, and I'm okay. It was a heart issue. And the reason I want to talk about it is not to, gain any kind of sympathy or do any of that. I'm fine. I'm healthy. I'm here.
Well, she does want to gain sympathy, but the thing is, you don't go from ICU to I'm fine, I'm healthy, I'm here, I'm back home, clearly like with no tubes or oxygen on her, clearly not even in a rehab center. She's just straight up back home after being in the ICU for a cardiac problem. That just doesn't happen. You don't go from ICU to straight back home looking like that. That's just not possible. That's not how the ICU works. I mean, it's just a blatant lie.
I wanted to talk about just what so many of us are facing, and that's access to affordable medical care. And one of the things that happened, first of all, was that I thought I was having a stress attack because my heart was out of rhythm and it was going too fast. It was an AFib. It did this for several hours. But because it didn't present like a normal heart attack, I didn't know that I was having one. I thought I was having a stress attack or panic attack. And
was she having a heart attack or was she having a dysregulated or a tachycardic attack from AFib? Basically, having unstable AFib and having a heart attack are two very different things. Now, she may not know that. She's not medical expert. She's pretending to be a geopolitical expert. She's not pretending to be a medical expert. So, I mean, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt and say, like, well, maybe she doesn't really understand. But that being said, most cardiac patients I know of, no matter their careers outside, if they're teachers or plumbers or uh, you know, YouTube influencers. It doesn't matter what they are. When they have cardiac issues, they are very, very well educated in their own cardiac issues and cardiac issues in general. And they will know whether they had an episode of unstable AFib or if they had a heart attack, which are two different cardiac disorders. Your your heart can be fine, it can be fully oxygenated, but if there's an electrical problem and you have unstable AFib, you need one sort of medication. If you are having a heart attack because of a coronary artery blockage, you need another type of procedure, a cardiac cath or another type of medication. The fact that she is mixing up heart attack and unstable AFib once again shows she's probably lying.
This happens to many women because women's symptoms present differently than men's when they're having that kind of issue.
This is true for heart attacks. It's not true for AFib, but yes, it is true for heart attacks. Women having heart attacks have different symptoms than men.
When I was in ICU, I had an experience where I was on the table, they had me on IVs, and my blood pressure dropped too low, my vitals started dropping, and the nurse had tears in her eyes, and she held my hand, and she said, "I'm sorry, you're not responding to the medication. Is there someone we can call?" And
You see, this is just not true. If somebody is literally dying, she's on the table, she's hooked up to IVs, I'm sorry, you're not responding to medication. Is there someone you would like us to call? The nurse is telling her she's dying, but apparently she's alert, conscious, oriented, able to respond to the nurse. That's not how dying people behave. Or at least people who are dying in the moment and may not make it through the next hour. That's not how they behave. And a nurse would not ask her to make that decision or for that information if she's currently actively dying. And once again, let's listen to this. She was in the ICU on the table, so I guess they were having surgery. She needed emergency cardiac surgery. She may have been having a cardiac cath. Her pressure dropped, and the nurse said, "Is there someone we can call?" First of all, that information will be in the patient's file. They're not going to stress out an already unstable patient by saying, "Who can we call?" That your contact information will be in your file. Second of all, how can you be critically ill in the ICU, possibly in the cardiac cath lab, and then 5 days later you're back at home saying, "Hello, hi, I'm fine now, don't worry." That's not how things work. After the cardiac cath, and I guess she's saying this was a heart attack, so she would need a cardiac cath. There are going to be days of making sure that the heart is responding well. She would still be in the hospital. The doctor would release her into cardiac rehab. Now, she could refuse all this and just go straight home. She can do it AMA, but she can do it. At the same time, however, he would at least try and make sure she had oxygen on. Her heart is not in the best condition, even after a procedure where she got a coronary artery ablation or had the artery widened so that the heart could have better oxygenated blood flow, and that's how the heart attack stops. Um, Even in that position, the heart is still pretty injured, and she's going to need to be on oxygen to reduce workload on the heart. She's going to need a whole bunch of stuff. And the fact she's just sitting there saying, like, "Well, I'm fine now, just a touch of the ICU cardiac. I almost died in the ICU 5 days ago, but I'm actually pretty cool now. Let's talk about politics." That's not what would happen.
And it was that moment where you really think about your life and your priorities. And, I thought about my daughter and my pets and my friends and my supporters and, what's been going on in my life. I've been under tremendous stress, as you know, because, I had a political machine come at me.
Okay, so yeah, it's Joe Biden's fault that she had a heart attack. It's not because she's 300 pounds and doesn't take care of herself. Now, you're under stress because you're under a criminal investigation for your blatant election interference when you made that false accusation against Biden. I'm going to say allegedly, but let's be clear. That's probably why you were stressed. I bet at this point you were already thinking you might have to leave the country. And now you're pretending you were in the ICU 5 days ago, but now you're just totally cool and chill despite almost dying on the table.
From 2019 forward, in 2020 when I came forward about Joe Biden and surviving sexual assault. I've had a lot of vitriol directed at me from his campaign, from people that he hired and trolls. And, they've gone after my life. They've gone after my career. They've gone after everything.
You see, she's using this pretend medical crisis to try to bolster her pretend rape accusation. It's not going to work. You were not in a medical crisis, and you never had anything bad happen to you as a result of being near Joe Biden, except getting fired. That was pretty bad. Yeah, I'm sorry you got fired, but frankly, my dear, you were lazy. You were lazy, you didn't do your work, that's why you got fired. That's been confirmed by several people now. And people throughout your career have confirmed it again and again and again that you are always lazy. You do not get your job. You will never finish a career. All right, let's see. Now that is all that I wanted to do and just react to some of the more outrageous lies of her. Thank you so much for joining me on this little pocket recap, and I will see you later. Thank you very much, Zankus Watchers. Good night.